All right, so great, guys. It's been about rain. However month, 4 months, for 21 units, almost like 5 months. That's amazing. We've been doing this, and we have a lot of views of our recorded videos. So this is the time again for us to reflect, to think about what we did, what we've learned, and where we might go. I think this is a very important. We started this as again a not long-term thing. Well, we didn't think about the term, how long, how short we were thinking about. We just thought it was be useful and meaningful to do, and we kept doing this. So I'm quite happy we are still in this, and we have covered a lot of places, from early on, China, Hong Kong, Australia, and we've covered Italy, Israel. We've covered, I think, Chris, what's the place in Central America? Not America, what's the place?
Uruguay?
Yeah, Uruguay, yes, right, okay. So we've covered Africa, different places. So I think this is an Australia, of course. So Canada, we had a lot of places. We also covered a lot of issues from students to teachers, to superintendents, to scholars, to consultants, a lot of things. So today, I think it would be good for us to really think about what have we learned about the silver lining for learning, out of this big pandemic, which is still raging in the United States and many other countries. And it also has returned to other places in place. So this is a quite interesting time for us to reflect. And I would just leave out there, say, whoever wants to jump in, just think about your thoughts and what do you think we have learned? Nobody wants to say anything?
It is the classic wait time. Go ahead, Scott.
So I'll start. So the famous science fiction author William Gibson once said that the future is already here, it's just not very evenly distributed. And I think one of the things that I keep thinking about throughout all of our episodes is this idea that we already have glimpses, right, of what this could look like, what this should look like. People are already doing this. We just haven't scaled it yet. So, as I think about all the inspiring stories that we've heard from our guests across our various episodes, whether they be teachers or researchers or students or whomever, over and over again, show us that the kinds of silver linings that we think could emerge from sort of pandemic era education already have been happening in a variety of different locations. And I think one of the things that gets all five of us up in the morning is that we get a chance to see those stories and see those examples, right? But they're not at scale yet.
All right, not at scale. And Punya, you want to jump in?
Sure. So when you're saying like the five of us have been doing this for almost 5 months now, and we are still friends. So that's a good thing, right? I mean, that's a big silver lining here. No, honestly, it's actually been a really fun ride. I mean, to look forward to every Saturday to hang out with, the five of you and Chang'e and any of the guests that we have. And, and some of the episodes have been truly inspiring and amazing. I mean, the high point, of course, was when we had the students, because that's what this is all about. And having those super amazing kids talk about what they're doing was truly inspiring. But I'm also thinking about, the last episode in Australia with Greg, and I'm thinking of the three women we had from Africa, speaking about education and what's going on in Africa. I'm thinking of Sean Lesher and his sort of deep, sort of value-driven thinking about the ones who are most disadvantaged in his school district. So, I mean, those have been really inspiring and powerful. And I completely agree, Scott, that that's one of my favorite quotes as well. That the future is here, that it's unevenly distributed. And the thing is, there are two ways of thinking thinking about that quote, right? I mean, just as the future is here and it's unevenly distributed, we often take it to mean that the latest technology or the latest innovation. But in some ways, the future also is more divided. The future is also more, the gaps that are already existing in society get even deeper. I mean, those are there already in certain pockets of the world. And the question is, how do we go to the future that we would rather prefer to have than some of these other futures, which are very possible? And so as a suggestion to the group, I think that maybe it's time for us to start thinking of and we have discussed this internally a little bit, and so I want to follow up on that. With sort of, can we look at topics and say, okay, if we had to redesign education from bottom up, what are the kinds of things we could do? So we could look at, let's say, we could look at particular tools or technologies that are coming out, which may be AI or machine learning. What implications does that have? Good, bad, indifferent, and look at that. Or we could look at themes like assessment. Like, Zhao, I've been sort of, on Twitter, you've been posting a little bit about that it's time that maybe this is an opportunity to get rid of some of these assessments, which have deeply racialized biases inherent within them, right? Maybe so. I think it would be great to get like a couple of people who are thinking deeply about assessment, who have been doing this pre-COVID. I mean, sort of our focus sort of so far has been people who are responding to COVID. But I think that this is going to be a much longer arc. And so maybe our conversations in terms of silver lining can start mapping that out. It can start saying that, okay, what are some, COVID or no COVID, whatever can we help design this future? And I think that would be really intriguing and interesting for us. I'm seeing this selfishly, right? I mean, how can I learn from this? And I would love to get some people on board who would help us think about some of these things, who have been thinking about, let's say, curriculum differently, who have been thinking about, so for instance, just to give a local example, at ASU, we have this whole team of people who are thinking about how do we deploy adults differently around learners. So this idea of distributed expertise, of working in teams, so that you have like the school that we redesigned, designed, where it's 80 or 90 kids with 6 or 7 adults who provide very differential support to those kids. Now that's a different model of thinking about classroom and schooling. So that's what I would like, maybe one possible way that we could go is identify some people or some themes or some ideas and say, let's give 2 or 3 episodes to some really interesting guests who have been thinking about these things for a long time and can inform what this future can be.
What you're saying, Pune and Rainy, I think it's really relates to Scott's view about, yes, we have a lot of spotted, different kind of innovations, changes. We see them happening. They're not evenly distributed. And now we also see, like I was posting on Twitter saying that, we don't see massive changes right now. If you look at, right now, at least in US, the media said, let's go back. From what I've seen in China, they've gone back and they will go back as if the COVID was an emergency that just happened. And so let me actually, let's go to Chris. Chris, what do you think?
Well, first, I agree with what Scott and Punya have said, so I don't want to repeat that. I was thinking about the fact that this has been yet another lesson for me in humility, because when we started in March, I made some bad assumptions. I made a good assumption, which is that if we went looking for heroes, we would find them. But I think all of us kind of assumed that by the fall, it would be possible to get back to at least some semblance of normal. We wouldn't have large groups of people, at least in a developed country like the United States, terrified to send their kids to school or to go teach in that school because of the virus. So obviously I underestimated how long this was going to take, and I'm trying to adjust my assumptions now to say, let's not be too optimistic about when this is going to end. You know, we would ask ourselves, are people just going to go back when we go back to normal? There may not be a back to normal. And so the good news is that we don't have to worry about their going back. And the bad news is that it's not clear that they know what to go to. But then I said, well, why was I so wrong about the virus? And actually, I wasn't wrong about the virus, because there's lots and lots of countries in which people are able to go back to, if not normal lives, at least a lot closer than we see in the US. I made another mistake that I've made throughout my life, which is to underestimate human folly. And it's just amazing to me. I mean, if you had a high stakes test and you asked a question that said, would you go to a party at the cost of risking your own life and the lives of everybody else there, and the lives of everybody related to those people, and the lives of the first responders that were going to have to take care of you? You would be astonished if one person said, oh yeah, sure, I'd go to that party, no problem. But in fact, that's exactly what we see. And what I wonder is, what kind of an educational system do we have where people can solve quadratic equations and they have a vocabulary of 4,000 obscure words because they want to get into college, but they don't have any common sense or any ethical fiber in terms of respect for others, even if they want to be free themselves. So it's sobering. It's really sobering to look at this world. And I find myself asking, what are we going to have to change about education so we're not graduating people like that?
Well, Chris, I read the news every day and I read too much. I try to write something, but when I cannot write, I read the news. I read Chinese news, I read English news, I read all of this. Most of this is actually what you describe, nonsensical, unethical behaviors of people. Right? I mean, that's just, and so you get more depressed. So I'm trying to not read the news, trying to think something else. And this is what I think education really has to deliver. Because in many other countries, I wouldn't say any country is particularly doing excellent, great. Honestly, I think we have not handled this as humanity very well. But then in some other countries, people are so compliant, they wouldn't do anything. So the government tells them to stay, then they stay. So that's is, and there's very little even complaint. So I'm just always puzzled by that piece, not in all governments do the right things, but so that's another issue that I think education just has to, I think, focus more on humanity. Again, I think we started saying this in March, saying that how education kind of has failed to teach people to become a member of a community, to think about their overall responsibilities, not only for themselves, but for others. That's it. Kurt, what do you think?
Unmute my mic first. Excellent points, everyone. Glad to be here on another Saturday. It's interesting, 5 months have gone by. I have not cut my hair in the 5 months. And so therefore I have a hat on and I'm trying to figure that part of my life out, whether I will ever get a haircut again or not.
Hey, there is a solution.
Whether I want to grow a beard on top of that. And when we do come back to campus, if anyone will recognize me. I once did the opposite and cut my beard and I had curly hair and I got it cut really short. No one knew who I was. In education, though, all the weeks we've been focused on these new models, we're all recognizing something in these models. The change process that people have gone through or are currently going through or are thinking about doing. Seeing some commonalities across the environments that we're bringing in and the people we're talking to. And maybe it's purposeful. It's our network that we have that might be similar in some regards in terms of progressive educational policies and practices and ideas. But we see some similarities, and yet at the same time, there is no one educational model. There is no one overarching approach and solution to COVID ID-19, as well as all the other pandemics that we're facing, whether it's issues of retention and, and completion, or assessment issues and so forth. We have a lot of problematic viruses out there in the education space that need to be addressed. But I try and think of what our role is. And, when you're dealing with new educational models, some people end up writing books, and some other people have newsletters, and other people have research reports, and some people create courses. All those are delayed responses to the change. In some ways, what we're doing each week is immediate, and it's kind of fun in this way, and that most of what we've done in our various careers, we have to wait a year for it to come out, or 6 months for it to come out, or till the next course comes in the sequence that we can offer the update. And it's right here, right now. And yet it also serves it's saved, and it can be replayed and rethought and so forth. So that's exciting in some ways for me. It's a production. I talked to Tony Bates this week. He says he used to be in production, TV production, and John Bagley, he used to be an actor. They're both in Canada. They're both kind of e-learning people from Athabasca at one point. I think Tony Bates is in UBC now, 80 years old and still working, hey? So he's a good role model. But, I started thinking about production, and why he was so excited about, he was producing 10 videos in his latest book, Contact North, or someone had asked him to create a series of videos related to it. And there's something about this production that's fun. It's you're the creative talents of the people that are here. We're each distinct in what we've been providing, and we all coalesce. But we are, in some ways, we are collectors. We are collecting people, ideas, thoughts, and models. So we're sort of as a collection space, and this channel, this YouTube channel, becomes that collection space. But we're more than that. We're disseminators in some ways of some of the ideas that come through. We're networkers and connectors of the people Chris knows, and Young knows, and Punya knows, and Scott knows, and I know. We're connecting, maybe sometimes we might be connecting them together on email, or through their blog posts that people have done, or through the writings that we have done in our respective weeks that we've taken over. So we're connecting, we're disseminating, we're networking, we're collecting, but we're also ruminating now. Every 4 weeks, every week, we ruminate on what's gone by. And so I think we serve an interesting purpose. It's a unique niche, and it has high value, at least to me, for the times that we've gone for 5 months, and I think we should continue through the fall and see what happens. And we have choices, like Punya said, go thematically and 3 or 4 weeks on a theme. But as we found out this week, there's more people we want to tap into and bring in. And so, we might do a theme related for 3 weeks, then have an open week for someone that just popped into our minds. It'd be great to bring in, and then go back to a theme. So we might go back and forth between a theme, or maybe, are you thinking 3 weeks, Punya, for a theme, or 4 weeks? You're muted, by the way.
Yes, I know. This is the phrase of the year, let me unmute myself.
So was it 3 weeks? 3 weeks?
No, I mean, I'm completely open. That's just a suggestion. And really, one of the nice things about this has been the fact that we sort of throw ideas out at each other, and what emerges is a more sophisticated, better version than what any individual person had suggested. And so so what I was thinking about was like, how can this process be more like a little bit more generative, right? So that we are developing some, and you're absolutely right, Kurt. It is doing all of the things that you're saying that is doing, and just, and selfishly, this is awesome, right? I get to meet new people, I get to think a little bit, and it happens in a relatively effortless way, and that's great. So but just thinking from sort of longevity of this, and if I'm thinking of any project that I'm doing or anything that I'm involved in, if I want to think of it, that how can it continue long-term, that it needs to have some component in it which gives it a little bit of structure, not so much that it's totally binding, but something that we know, can, like, okay, we can look at assessment, then maybe we look at something else, and that just gives us a connective tissue.
We might,
so it's almost like, let's think of this as we are writing a book. These are the chapters of the book. And if we can sit down and say, okay, we need to have 11 chapters, and then we say, okay, let's try and find the people with whom we can have these conversations. Those are our chapters in some sense, right? That's all I was sort of suggesting.
You forgot two things, Punya. This is providing you with an opportunity to express your creativity and for us to appreciate your creativity. So and I do
thank you for
appreciate
mentioning that, because I have to say this, that every week making those visuals is part of the joy of my life. So I love the fact that you guys give me that opportunity and that you are willing to let me indulge myself in that, and editing the videos and all of that. That's sort of my relaxation now that I'm stuck in 111 degrees of Phoenix, Arizona. So thank you for that.
So we might take a basketball metaphor in here of a 3-2 zone. So 3 weeks thematic, and then 2 weeks with something, or a 3-1-1. 3 weeks of thematic, 1 week we reflect, and then 1 week we have a spontaneous impromptu or an alternative guest that kind of pops into our brains. That'd be ideal, rather than just going theme. I think we need to have some open weeks in there.
Kurt, I'm not going to jump in, because what I was, there are several things I've learned I want to share with all of you. Is that, first of all, it's surprising how stable our audience is. It's a small group, tiny small group, and they're always there for us. I bet we paid them to do this. So thank you, the audience, for hanging out there. It's very stable, but we've never grown that group either. We've never grown. So that's actually a problem. So why can't we grow? Are we having any ideas? Or maybe our ideas are not sharp enough to attract more people? Or maybe, technically, as I mentioned before, the 5 of us plus Shuangye, we are all sorts of some kind of experts in some things. That's why we are at least pretending to teach at universities. And maybe some of our ideas are not expressed fast enough out there. So that's really more reflection on what we've been doing. The second point is that, I don't think we're surprised to find all the guests have ideas to share, they've done amazing things. But then how do we affect, a broader a set of people? So our intention was to bring all these examples as silver lining, as great things, so others can scale up. Going back to Scott's view, to say more people would do this. So there are more examples. Maybe does this mean that actually learning from examples does not work? It is actually up to individuals who will start on their own. That's one thing I've been looking at, so-called innovators. I think Scott even talked about, a bunch of them. Caitlin Tucker will be example. I mean, when I speak to a lot of those teacher innovators, many of them, they did not seem to be inspired by anyone, but they actually started wanting to be different. And then they follow or they read others to change. So how do we make that happen? So people watch us, besides just hanging out with us for an hour. And what else? What can we do to help people individually? We're having a great time, but really, think about the resource we put in from how many, 5 to 6 different universities were together. We have had many years of doing this. And so we have something to share, plus our guest. So this is quite a lot of resources. And how can we make our ideas at least, reach more people? And so they feel like they're learning something. And the third point I think I want to make is that when we are disconnected physically, we are actually more connected. That's a point I made last time, is that we're actually more connected. I would never have imagined myself having so many conversations with so many people from so many different lands, from so many different places. And how do we keep that part in education? Even when, like Chris said, the virus might end because we have vaccine, or may not end. But even if it's ended, this kind of global connection actually matters, is important. How do we keep that going in our schools? I don't mean one school, 2 schools, I mean massively a lot of schools. How do we rethink about learning from different places, from different lands? So that's what I've been reflecting and thinking about. Of course, I would love to say our more audience will come in to give us ideas to say what you would like to do, and also give us suggestions how do we do it. And I know we have not addressed some of your questions or discussions because we're now really trying to reflect on what we learned and what we can do in the future. Chris, I saw you have unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really good that we're all different. That's one of the reasons that we've done so well, because if I were to do this by myself, or any of you were to do it by yourself, it would be like the restaurant that only serves chicken. And you get a loyal following of people who love chicken, but nobody else shows up. And the five of us form enough diversity that we're attracting people. So that's one thing that I think we're doing right. And I would be horrified if we came to a consensus, because then we would be, then we'd be in trouble because we wouldn't have that diversity. The second thing that I would say is that I value the fact that there are people on this show that nobody has ever heard of and that no one would ever hear of if we weren't here. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have people that everybody knows and people that show up in a lot of different places, because that doesn't mean that they're not worth having here. But I think it's a special kind of contribution that we have people who have a lot to say, but they have no platform for saying it. When I think, Yang, about one way to change impact, increase impact, I'm deliberately teaching a course this fall that is targeted to global South countries as well as global North countries. But these days, anybody in any ed tech program is going to have a bunch of international students. And this is a very rich set of case studies, particularly case studies of global South countries, which don't tend to turn up very often. So I'm really excited about the fact that when I start teaching my course and somebody says, I'm in this country that got involved with one laptop per child and we have an okay infrastructure, but we don't know what to do with it, I can say, go watch the Uruguay episode. Or I'm from a country that has a really your life in a day, high stakes summative test. Well, go watch the China episode. So I think that we know about this resource, but anybody who teaches ed tech courses should be looking at Silver Lining for Learning and saying, I could use this in my course. I could give my students some really interesting grounded examples.
So I do want to point, Zhao, I love the way you phrase that question, right? This issue, because if these ideas have to spread, the question becomes, how do we set up structures and systems that allow, it's not as much about whether we have a bigger audience as much as are these ideas taking off and spreading, right? I think that's one point. But to come to Chris's point about diversity, I actually think that we lack diversity as a group. I feel like we are not at all representative, and I just am completely aware of my blind spots about experiences, about situations, and so on, that these are part of our lived experiences. And I think that, and again, I'm not saying that we need to change the group, but I think that we have to look deeper into ourselves and think about what are, as a collective, blind spots are. We are all academics. That's a significant blind spot in and of itself. We try. I know each one of us in our own way tries to engage and interact with, whether it's Zhao or Scott, I know, in particular, I think that you guys put a lot of effort into engaging with superintendents and or school systems and so on. And in my own job, I do that a little bit, not maybe as much. But there are many ranges of diversity, and I don't think that as 5 middle-aged men, if I can say that, we necessarily reflect the challenges, issues faced by a lot of groups and people in the educational space. And I think that we have to do, honestly, a better job of that. And I think that's an indictment of me as much as of us as a group. So it's nothing personal against anybody, but I do think that we lack that diversity piece pretty strongly. And we don't see it because, that's the thing. It's a blind spot, right? So I think we can do a better job, honestly, of inviting guests who speak to, who are living and working within contexts that I think that we desperately need to learn from. I mean, I just had a conversation yesterday with this educational leader, Jeevan Chanika, out in Canada. And it was it's interesting gentleman, was born in Canada, went back to West Indies, grew up there, came back to Canada, was sort of quasi-homeless for a little bit, has family members who are Hindu, Muslim, Christian. He himself converted to Islam. I mean, his lived experience and what he brings to the table is something that is just an amazing aspect of us thinking about education and the future. So I think we collectively need to do a better job of that.
Well, Pune, it's, when Chris was talking about the virus, doesn't end, hasn't ended. I remember again, I will say again, end of February, I wrote about what if it doesn't end for a year. I got a really recent, in the last few weeks, I've been feeling more and more the significance of what we do. I think it is truly changing humanity in many ways if we reflect on it. And the aftermath will be even worse. So this is why, when I asked you guys want to do more of this, that really rings on me, that this is very important. Remember when we started, we didn't plan, we didn't think, I just asked you, let's start doing this. So we naturally lacked diversity. I think women is a big issue, of course, for example, that's a challenge. We'll try to deal with I think those things by finding more guests in response. I think Maureen in our audience pointed it out, for example, that Shuangye was not always in there. We did not, because she was more of a sponsor in the beginning, we did not put her as part of the 5 people here. And so, but there's another issue, I think, Pune, you said a lot more about the broad range of disciplines, of experiences, of people's perspectives in general. Because already 5 of us are all college professors. Really, what can we do? All in North America. We have, in that way, whatever we do, we read the same things, we go to the same conferences, we talk about similar issues. That's and luckily in our audience, we always get some very smart people watching that. But I think what I would like to go back to Scott and then go to Kurt is to say the idea of themes, for example, not really themes, maybe topics. And for example, if we pick a topic, how well do we want to really argue and debate? And because that's another issue. For example, assessment. There are different ways of doing assessment, but assessment can be quite you can have a lot of debate. From my way, I would say there should never be any real assessment, in the traditional sense. But then some people say, no, we should keep some. So I would like to say, what do you guys think about the level of debate? Because in our conversation so far, I don't see big challenging views. We have not been treating challenging views. That may not work. We've been going with our guests. We've not entering more different views of that. Scott or Kurt, you guys, or actually anyone can jump in.
You go first. I'll come after you.
I mean, I went to law school, so I'm quite happy with having conversations that are tough and challenge each other. I mean, we spent lots of time learning how to do that. So I'm game.
I think Punya brings up a good point and I was going to raise it a few weeks ago with all the demonstrations happening across the country, across the world. A lot of young people are leading them, and we haven't had people in their 20s and 30s much in the show. And I think younger teachers or educators, even policymakers in their 20s and in their 30s, I had recommended Jeannie Majaria, who's a young kind of up and coming person, but that's just one. We need more on the list there, and we also need someone on the upper end of the age continuum dealing with lifelong learning. Whether even as far as centenarians, what's going on there. It might be interesting to push the envelope a little bit in terms of the shows and what we have. Chris has got a book, the 60-year curriculum. He's got to have a ton of people that he's interviewed for that book or who contributed to the book in various ways that he can tap into. I mentioned my former student Rovi Brandon, who's also been pushing it, and Chris knows him as well. So I think people who are dealing with those issues. I think Global South is a big issue, and I've got a book on it, and Chris is working in it, and so we've got expertise in the area. Chris, when is your course syllabus going to be done?
It has to be done in 2 weeks. So
Same here.
I'm actually flipping my classroom. So every week I'm going to generate between 4 and 5 3 to 5 minute videos that people watch before they show up. Trying to follow, what evidence suggests is the right length. And I'm looking at how to make those engaging enough that people will hang in there for 5 minutes. So I'm really massively redoing the course to try to model, what this might look like. But silver lining for learning can't be all things to all people. And I would be delighted if a group of young people got together and said, let's do a program called Next Generation Learning, and held it on every Sunday evening. And another group of people got together and said, we really want to have an extended conversation about what it means to be anti-racist, anti-discriminatory, etc. And our staff is going to reflect that, and our speakers are going to reflect that. And every single week, we're going to try to go deeper and deeper and deeper into this topic. And we're going to hold that on Saturday at noon. I mean, I think that if we try to be all things, we end up being nothing. And I kind of like what we are, and getting diversity through our guests, which I think we've done a good job at, because they're the ones who are doing the talking, really. I mean, we're asking questions. We're not, the stars of the show monopolizing the conversations, except for these episodes. And let someone who wants to do an assessment show or a show that really wrestles with what diversity and equality means, or a show that has, young people's ideas about the future, go for it would be my attitude. But I don't know how to respond to the idea that somehow we have to do all those things, because I don't think there's a way that we can.
Well, I think, Chris, I like, your idea about actually encouraging others to do different shows, because every time, every episode, we see people raising honestly similar issues. And these issues, some of them are really too big for us to address. For example, equity. I think equity is such a big term, a big word that captures so many different things in many different countries. I myself have been trying very hard to address that, to say, how do I myself to say, you know, we are not in the position to deliver millions of laptops or devices to schools. We're not in the position to do that. And I doubt many people who have the money to do that would actually be listening to us anyway, you know. So many of us are the ones, we really cannot have much impact, honestly. I'm very aware of this, you know, what's going on with the, and we can talk a little bit about that. You know, that's we can try to think about how it tried to address. Another issue I think I want to really highlight is that none of the solutions we've highlighted or we are going to highlight is going to solve all problems. I really want to emphasize that. I think it's very important to understand that not every solution is going to be a solution to solve every problem. You know, that I wrote a book about that called Side Effects of Education. Everything has a side effects. You cannot have, you know, a panacea that address everything. But sometimes we as reformers, or I hate to use the term reform, or people who pursue innovation can get into this habit. Whenever something new, something good comes up, we kept asking, does it do this? Does it do that? You know, it's like when you have a coffee maker, it keeps, does it make great tea? Does it do that? I said, well, it does coffee. That's pretty good. Why would you want to do something else? I think that's a big issue in a lot of our discussions, conversations. We have that we tend to force something into something that it cannot be. I think that's another thing I would like to say that. And but anyway, I do not want to dominate the conversation. Go ahead, Kurt. Looks like you're eager to say something.
I was just going to say, with the 15 or so minutes that we have left, do we want to attack or target certain questions that have come in the chat window? Were there things that have percolated up, or have we already addressed most of them? Scott, Punyo, are you keeping tabs of those?
There's a lot going on, honestly, on the discussion. So for me to...
You're supposed to be watching that, you know. I love when Maureen was joking. I hope so. She was joking about. I was not talking, by the way, not silver lining for learning is not going to solve all problems. Of course, we're going to solve all the problems. You know? We're talking about our guest will solve all the problems.
Yeah, no, I think the point, Zhao, that you make, that's a really important one, that if we are to respect the complexity of education and, you know, that what our guests and what we are involved in is really offering ideas about what's worked for them, and that would spark ideas in others. It's not that we're going to take this, that you can take something that X or Y did and say, I'm going to use it as is. I mean, that's been the biggest challenge of this idea of scaling, and, you know, is this idea that you can just replicate exactly what it is, right? Context, we know in education, is critical. And so that's something that we need to. So coming back to the point of the earlier point, I don't think that I was suggesting that our program, that this needs to be about solving all problems. The point I was just trying to make is that we need to become a little more sensitive to possible blind spots and see what other things are going on to include as guests in our show. Because I think so far, you know, the one interesting ones have been wherever we have sort of gone off the beaten path, where we have talked to students, or the examples of the entrepreneurs in Africa who were just doing something different than the typical education. You know, so I think that's what I was trying to get at more than anything else, is can we spread that, be deliberate and intentional about how we can expand that. And I think that will just lead to exactly those kinds of conversations or new ideas that will, you know, that we might not be aware of, others who watch the programs or so on may not be aware of.
Well,
I'll agree with Dante's point that this is unique, getting 5 professors together for 20 some episodes in a row. It's not normal. It doesn't really happen that often. And it is something that I've appreciated too over time, to listen to my colleagues and hear what they're thinking. So good point, Dante.
So there's another issue I think I want us to to think about. I will just put out here, we have, again, it's from the audience, is that our audience is very active. And besides the live audience, we each week, each episode get about 100 views, sometimes more. That's not bad. I'm only thinking about views. When they're embedded, Scott, we don't know how many people watch it. Embedded is not counted towards the views. Okay, so I get a lot of emails from different people. I watched, which actually I'm quite surprised, and nice to know that is very good. Do we think, because our audience, most of them watch because they are very progressive, they are innovative, they are aligned a lot of with our thinking. So I'm actually trying to say, invite all of us, because we want to reach more people, to give them a sense of what's happening. So I'm thinking about, how do we, accidentally trying different ways to reach them. We tweet, we blog. Chris, you do LinkedIn. We tell our students. Are there any other ways that we could, other than maybe talking to Sean Hannity on Fox to reach out to more people so we can watch us, or maybe go to sing, and I don't know. So what other ways we can help? Because you can assign students, which I do, we can do different things about this. And I'm just throwing that out. If you guys have any ideas and thoughts, because these are, honestly, myself, when I watch some of the episodes, I feel very good. I think we have good, honest conversations.
This is Scott. So, we don't always get to pick what goes viral and what doesn't. But we also know that ideas that spread win. So I think, our audience today has been giving us some interesting suggestions, everything from a MOOC where we could serve large number of people to have an interesting conversation over the same period of time, helping with social media, creating a Facebook page, right? That I'm a big fan of hashtags because I think they help us reach communities. So I think there's lots of potential ways to play. And we might need some help with some of that because there's only 5 of us and we also have very busy academic lives on other fronts. But there are some ways that we can maybe make ourselves easier to spread with a little more thinking. So,
one of the things, for example, America is going to open schools or offer courses in different ways. It would be great for a district, honestly, or somehow to do a study group, so they can study, they can watch some of this and have a discussion. Because I think right now, a lot of teachers, from news are fighting, supporting, over this issue of, do we open school, do we not open school? I hope, they would also spend some time to think about what kind of schools do we want to open? What kind of new school do we want to open? And this show, Silver Lining, has a lot of ideas that can be shared, can be thought about. So that's where my personal thinking about it. How do we drive deeper? How do we become more attractive? How do we help more? Yes, I agree with Chris that we are not trying to become everything for everybody, which we cannot become possibly. But it is also important for us to, how do we reach out? So that's the puzzle I'm trying to solve myself.
So one thing that we could do, and I'm a little worried about saying this because I don't have the capacity to do it. We could make every week a highlights video that was like 3 minutes long. And it just captured really interesting things that guests said or really interesting questions that one of us asked. And it would be a teaser. And I think if that were posted on social media, people will watch almost anything that's 3 minutes long, especially if they watch it once and it's really kind of intriguing. And some of them even go and watch the episode and then they tell their friends, hey, the latest highlights video just came out. So maybe we should try to do something with what we've got. If we know of anybody who is an incipient highlights video director and producer in our students, for example, I think that would be a form of outreach. It would be interesting to see if we did that for a month as an investment. Would it make a difference? Would we get more people? Would we get more buzz?
So if I can follow up on that. So first, I love that idea. And, if somebody is willing to go through the session and give me the clips which need to go in that editing, I can do the editing. It's watching the thing over and over again to find those clips. That's the time consuming part. But if somebody tells me grab minute 15, 17 to 16, whatever, and then this and this and this, I can do that. That's not the big deal. But I love this idea because it makes sort of snippets of this bigger thing. The other thing that I think is, like, we have a very devoted group that's following us, but we have not given them an opportunity to connect with us beyond the YouTube chat, which also doesn't get archived. And so what happens is that you have a Saturday, a group of people comes together, and then we have a Saturday. We interact with each other by email to, decide on guests, to do this, to do that. But there is no opportunity for these individuals who are part of this family. It's no longer just 5 of us. I mean, the names here on the YouTube channel, they are friends now. Even though some of them we have never met, some of them actually have reached out, as and we have actually interacted with them. They've ended up on the side conversations and all of those things. So I'm wondering if something can be done, because there is energy there to tap into that. So maybe it's a Facebook group, though I hate to send any traffic to Facebook for a range of reasons. But I think there is an energy there that can be tapped, which I think that can in turn lead to this widening of the audience. And I love to hear some ideas like that, because I think the people there the people visiting, like joining us, would love to participate in that.
I don't know about others. I have to tell you, I'm extremely bad at anything visual, honestly. So that's but I love Chris' idea. So let's explore that possibility. Maybe we have people in the audience who wants to help us with this stuff. I saw Jim had a suggestion for us to go on the show. I said, yeah, sure, we'll be happy to do it. And send us an email. We'll just be happy to go promote this. We can do anything. But I think that my point is really this is just I just think this show has more value that should reach more people.
Right.
So that's just the very simple thing. So let's say anyone has some final thoughts before I introduce our next episode's guest.
You could have a class project, an optional project, where one of our graduate students volunteers to create a couple teasers for a couple episodes and see where that goes. One thing could lead to another, as the rock group once said. But there could be audience driven. And just the fact that this issue is raised will make our antennas, go up for the next opportunity. We talk to a marketing person or someone looking to do something like that. So I see the note here about TikTok influencer. And
well, 45 days, okay, before Microsoft, unless Microsoft buys it, so that's a different story. Think about that. It's Chris, you have any final thoughts? And Scott?
I just want to thank the people that are coming back week after week, and
I
maybe
know.
without making it a formal show, for one show for our loyal participants, we should have a happy hour afterwards where we all hang around and they get the secret special password Zoom link and they get to come hang with us. And
Hey,
that's a great idea.
so on.
I love that. Maybe on our next round, we can do a round with our loyal, audience. Have a chat with them. Have a big party. So after 4 weeks, let's do that. Thank you, Chris. I think that's a great idea. Scott?
we'd be looking at early September, which would also be a start of many school years. So many people would probably be looking forward to having
A drink.
a reflective drink, as I would, call
Yes.
it.
We'll have a silver lining for learning happy hour. Yeah, it's all good. I mean, lots of great ideas discussed today. I think lots of great ideas from our guests today as well. So who are helping us think about what some possibilities are. You know, obviously we'll have to figure out what we have bandwidth for. And, you know, I absolutely concur with Chris that, you know, we have to stay within our zone, whatever our zone is. We can't be all things to everyone. But, you know, these tools are easy to use and relatively cheap or free, which means that if you don't like the coffee maker, that's silver lining for learning, then you want tea instead, then start brewing, right? So we will gladly publicize and help draw people to your efforts. So.
Maureen, you have 4 weeks to get us all, you know, beer mugs and silver lining for learning. No, I'm just kidding, Maureen.
She might do it, and then you're going to be like, "Oh my God, what did I say?"
Well, you could. So let me actually, you know, summarize. I think today is a very, very good episode. Honestly, we are more lighthearted. We are thinking a lot more than before. We're not as technical. Honestly, I think that I feel very good today. And the audience gave us a lot of ideas, suggestions. And so we're going to follow, we're going to discuss, well, or, you know, we try to think, you know. One comment, I think, as a Priyanka was mentioned, that we are too elite, you know, that in many ways we are, you know, because we are, you know, kind of professors, you know, professors pretend to be elite, you know, we are in the, you know, what, silver tower, that's where we are. I think we cannot, honestly, I don't think any one of us, maybe Punya, you are the exception. We cannot be successful on TikTok. So don't try that. I don't know. You may be the only one who can do that, but
Nope.
I don't think I can do that. So let's accept who we are. Let's accept our audience. Let's accept our topic. And everything we're talking about is try to reach out to do a lot more things. You know, we can do that.
So I think if we can think of some way, Zhao, sorry to interrupt, but of including the group in the work in between. And, you know, maybe it's a list, I don't know what the process is, but some kind of an interactive way that energy can also be tapped in as a continuity. I think that would be fabulous. And I have no idea what that could or would be.
I don't know, because another thing, you know, we talk about too, Pune, is that we have a real job. So that's another thing. So this is, I'm also concerned about us expanding into something too big when we can't handle. You know, that's another thing I'm quite nervous about, to say, if we did something so big and then it takes real time to manage to do that.
No, I get it.
But
which is why the point is not for us to take on more. The point is to spread the work with this team of this group of viewers who have been with us, right? And see if anybody there steps up. We haven't really given them an opportunity to jump in and try things if they would like to. That's all.
But we can have people run a special episode. We can be, you know, in the background. They can offer. We can. Yeah, I love those ideas. So let's think about that. And thanks for coming. Next week, we're going to have Stephen Heppel, who is quite well known, I think, in the world of EdTech. You know, he's going to join us, and he's been doing educational technology for years. I think before many of us got involved in that. Scott, go ahead.
Well, and the next 2 weeks are pretty exciting for me too. I mean, we're going to talk about simulations from the student standpoint. We're going to have Dr. Catlin Tucker, who is all things blended learning. Like, we've got a fantastic lineup this month.
Yes.
And Stephen Hippel is from the UK. If you want to look him up there, he's just fascinating. He deals with many practical issues for K-12 teachers are dealing with around the world, and has solutions. He has creative ideas probably, you know, every week. A unique creative idea. You can't implement all of them, but he did Not School as a project about 15, 20 years ago in the UK, which is Not School is happening now. So, and all sorts of other creative things. You'll really enjoy him. And if you like him a lot, maybe he'll invite you on his sailboat.
That's right. Hairport.net, if you want to say that. And I'm going to write a little blog. And Punya, you get to create another thing, you know, for next week. So I plan to write a blog about it. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. This is wonderful. It's great. And see you next week.